Just listen to that sentence for a second. It's from a legal petition of all things, but it captures something so deeply human. It's really the core of a landmark case about identity, biology, and the law.
Okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to break down the incredible story of Jeff Cagandahan, a case that really put the legal definitions of identity to the test. You know, on the surface, it all started with a pretty simple request. Back in 2003, someone named Jennifer Cagandahan went to the courts to ask for something that would make a legal document match their personal reality. But as it turns out, this simple request would spiral into a case that went all the way to the nation's highest court. To really get why the court's final decision was so huge, you have to understand that it wasn't just about legal arguments in a vacuum. It was all rooted in the life story of one person. And that's exactly where we need to start.
This timeline is so important because it shows this wasn't some sudden whim. This was a long biological journey. Jeff was born in 1981, registered as female. But right from the start, the signs were there that things weren't so black and white. There was a diagnosis of clitoral hypertrophy, then an ultrasound at age 6 showed small ovaries. By 13, those ovarian structures were even smaller, and none of the typical signs of female puberty were happening. All of this history led, years later, to that petition in 2003.
All right, this is where we need to dig into the science a little bit, because honestly, the medical facts are absolutely crucial to understanding this whole thing. The court had to face a biological reality that just doesn't fit into our neat little legal boxes.
So the first concept the court had to work with was this idea of intersex. It's basically a general term for when someone's biological sex characteristics, chromosomes, hormones, anatomy, don't fit neatly into the typical male or female categories.
And that brings us to Jeff's specific diagnosis, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH for short. Now, this is a type of intersex condition where the body naturally just produces way too much androgen. That's a male hormone. This causes male characteristics to develop even in someone who might be genetically female.
So you have this really fascinating biological puzzle that the court had to figure out. Genetically, Jeff has XX chromosomes, which is typical for a female. But because of CAH, his body was naturally flooded with male hormones. The result was ambiguous anatomy and, as he got older, the development of secondary male characteristics, like a deep voice and facial hair, while his female reproductive organs never really developed.
So the local court looked at all this evidence and said, yeah, this makes sense, and they granted Jeff's petition. But the story was far from over. The government, through the Office of the Solicitor General, actually appealed that decision, kicking this whole thing up to the Supreme Court.
And this is basically the legal showdown. On one side, you have the government with two main arguments. First, a technicality. They said Jeff didn't formally name the local civil registrar in the lawsuit. And second, the really big one, they argued that the law simply does not allow for a change of sex on a birth certificate, period. But Jeff's side argued back. They said, look, the registrar knew everything that was going on, so the spirit of the rule was met. And more importantly, they said, we're not changing a fact, we're correcting the original entry to match what's biologically true.
So, there you have it. The medical facts are on the table, the legal arguments were made, and the whole case landed in the hands of the Supreme Court for the final word. The big question was, which way would they go? Would they stick to the rigid black and white text of the law, or would they find a way to make room for Jeff's unique reality? The decision came down. The court ruled that the petition was denied.
But wait, let me be perfectly clear. The government's petition was denied. Jeff Cagandahan won. The Supreme Court backed the lower court's decision, allowing the changes to his birth certificate to stand.
But look, the verdict itself is only half the story. It's the reasoning, the why behind the decision that makes this a truly historic, landmark ruling.
I mean, just listen to this incredible statement from the court. They're basically saying that they will not be bound by mere appearances when biology itself proves that a simple male/female classification doesn't always work. This was a huge moment, the court admitting that the law has to be flexible enough to handle the real complexities of nature.
And that led them here, to this profound new standard. For intersex individuals, the court said the deciding factor should be what that person, as a mature adult, believes their gender is, especially when there's solid biological evidence to back it up. I mean, what a powerful statement on self-determination. So you can really boil down the court's game-changing logic to 3 core principles. First, respect that nature is diverse. Biology doesn't always fit in those neat boxes. Second, uphold the mature choice of the individual. And third, and this is so important, a principle of compassion. The law should try to make life easier for people in unique situations, not harder. The court even pointed out that Jeff chose to let nature run its course and that his personal choice deserved respect.
So, after all that, what's the big picture here? What's the lasting impact of this one powerful case?
Well, the main takeaway is this. The Supreme Court created a legal precedent where, for people who are intersex, the law should take a step back and defer to their lived reality and how they identify themselves. It was a massive affirmation that your identity isn't just what's written on paper when you're born, but who you are, shaped by your biology and your own mature understanding of yourself.
And that really leaves us with this big, important question that the Cagandahan case forces us all to think about. In a world full of legal forms that demand you check just one of two boxes, how do we make our laws wise enough and compassionate enough to actually recognize the full, beautiful, and sometimes complex diversity of what it means to be human?